Hey Creekside, I'm Brian Vickers here. I am here with Brenda, Holland, and we're talking giving testimonies. It's a discipline of our faith that is a really kind of tricky and difficult one. Everybody who understands the discipline of giving didn't start there. We all it was a process and a learning experience and a faith building thing for all of us. So just tell me a little bit, how did it start for you when you started realizing this is something I'm called to do? This is an area of my faith that I want to grow in.
Yeah, well, when Jeff and I first got married, I was still in school, in university, and he was teaching in Arkansas, which back then was paying, not too much.
Not much, yeah.
I'm very structured, very organized. I was a math major, so I was like, we gotta have a budget. I made a budget, did not include tithing. We hadn't really even discussed that or thought about it. Didn't include it, and it was, okay, it's gonna come out with just paying the bare minimum.
Barely getting by.
Yeah. I don't remember if it was a sermon that we heard or if it was it was just reading the scripture, but Malachi 3:8-10 kind of like just glared at us. And the scripture is God talking to the Israelites and saying, you've robbed me. And they say, well, how did we rob you? And he said, you're not, giving the first of your tithes. You're not giving the first fruits.
Yeah.
And then he goes on and encourages them to test him and see that he won't open the floodgates of heaven.
Yeah.
So we sat down and we're like, okay, how's that going to work? Because our budget only includes the rent, the
no
food,
extra
the insurance, the car insurance. But we felt really convicted, so we went ahead and redid the budget and put tithe at the top, 10% off the top. That was really hard because there's lots of ways to kind of, well, this is part of giving to God, this is part of giving to God.
Yeah.
But we just off the top,
before
10%
anything
before
else.
anything else.
Yeah.
Amazingly, every single month, I'd get out my check register to balance the checkbook. For those of you who are kids, you don't know what that is. Paper. You gotta get you had to get your bank statement. And you had to compare. I would do the check register, and it would always show negative. But my bank account statement would show we had money in the account. And I was just like, Jeff, I don't know how this works.
You're not bad at math, right?
No, I had a math major.
Math major, so you were doing the books right.
I was doing the books right, but it was just money was still in the account. To this day, I don't know how that worked. What it did was it helped us to grow in our faith because we had to depend on him, truly had to depend on him. There was no extras.
Yeah.
And so to see him actually come through, it grew our faith. We have never gone without. The Lord has always provided. Those of us who rely on what we call deputized fundraising, so we raise funds for our mission.
Right.
I remember the first year of trying to raise funds, that was really tough because I was like, I don't know. It sure teaches you dependence on God's people.
Yeah.
For God's mission. And we've never gone without,
Yeah. Ministry got done, and the Lord moved through it. And that's an interesting perspective because you're in the mission field, and not only are you, putting your faith in God with your personal tithes, but you're relying on the faithfulness of his people to do the same, to put resources into God's hands to support ministries like yours. So
and essentially the church here at Creekside is the same thing. Like the ministers at Creekside, the work of Creekside can't get done unless we all trust God that, okay, we're going to take our resources and give to the Forward in Faith campaign or just the daily operations, and so that we can do and see God's work happening in our communities and around the world.
Well, thanks so much for sharing your journey with that. I know we're all in process, and we all have our kind of, areas of our faith that we are growing in, and giving is such an overlooked one sometimes because money's such an icky subject for a lot of people, but it just shows it's one of those places where God proves himself.
Yeah, that's right.
It's more about wanting our hearts and making sure that he's like, hey, rely on me first, trust me, test me, which is the only time that God says to test him on something, right? And he doesn't invite that sort of challenge without being ready to prove himself faithful, as always.
Yeah. It's so good whenever you get to see his promises come to pass day in and day out, and year after year.